Miss MonMon, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to have a little bit of a tea time chat, and today's topic is vintage shopping online. You might remember that recently I bought a vintage prom dress off eBay and I didn't exactly get what I thought I was buying. Yeah, it was bad. So today I thought I would share some of my favorite tips and tricks for vintage shopping online. Go and make yourself a cup of tea and we will get started. My first tip for everybody is know your measurements. Before you get started with some online vintage shopping, make sure you properly measure your bust, your waist and your hips. I often write them down in inches and centimeters, as some sellers will be using the metric and others will not. So that way you have everything listed. My next tip is have an idea of what you actually want to shop for. If you go on to something like Etsy and just type in 1950s vintage clothing, you will be bombarded by the amount of results that come up. Instead, why don't you try writing something like 1950s floral pink day dress. You can even put in whether you want something with cotton or extra tulle or a prom dress. Be as specific as you can. Now remember, search results will always vary and you will often see sponsored or paid for items first on places such as eBay and Etsy, so you might need to do a little bit of digging. My third tip for everybody is get comfortable. Do not have the intention of vintage shopping in 10 minutes online. There are so many things out there that it will take you sometimes several hours to really look at things, really read all the descriptions, to try and find the best ever outfit. I have made the mistake of thinking, I've got half an hour before I go to sleep. I'm going to jump on Etsy and see what's there. And the next thing I know, it's 4 a.m. and all I've done is fallen in love with a dress that I can't afford. My fourth tip for everybody is remember the saying, too good to be true. For those that have watched my vintage prom dress from eBay videos, you will know that sometimes if something does seem a little bit too cheap, it could be a knockoff. You can always try reverse searching certain images. For example, that prom dress that I bought, you can see that there are so many options to shop for from that one dress image. So you can reverse search certain things, or maybe try and describe the dress in a different way if you find one that you like, and see if there are any extra results. My next tip is the one that hurts the most. Know your budget. For those that have been around the vintage online circuit, we all have sellers that we know are really well priced and some that are ridiculously overpriced. In saying that, sometimes you just absolutely fall in love with an item, but the price could be something ridiculous. Try to be very strict on yourself. I have a max budget that I will pay for a day dress versus a prom dress, and it's sometimes really hard to stick to it. But in the grand scheme of things, remember, it is always your choice how you manage your budget, and whether you decide, nope, that is my unicorn piece, I cannot live without it, go for it. My next tip is read the description really well. When you are shopping online, most items that you click on will have a description somewhere on the listing. On Etsy, it's always under item description. On eBay, it'll be in the further listings down below. So make sure you read, because this is where the seller should tell you if there's anything wrong with the dress. Everything from staining to holes to rips, this is what you need to know, because this should also affect the price of the garment. Heavily damaged items are generally cheaper, so if you have the skills to fix them, you can find some really great bargains. By knowing what you are getting, you will not have any nasty surprises. Yes, I have accidentally forgot to read the description, and in the excitement of getting a dress, I didn't realize that there would be stains on it, but knowing how to wash vintage garments as well is really helpful. So make sure you know what you are getting when you are vintage shopping online. If there is no description, my next tip is always reach out to the seller and ask questions. Most sellers are quite happy to answer questions, send extra photos if you want them. I have had to ask sellers to show me pictures of the inside of a dress because they said it was heavily damaged but didn't provide any more description than that. And all it was a couple of ripped seams and some bias binding had come off. So it was an easy fix, so I nabbed that dream dress of mine. My next tip is simply understand the risk. Whenever you shop online, you never quite know 100% what is going to arrive on your doorstep. This goes just as strongly for vintage. Of course, certain lighting may make the item look like a different color, or you maybe think it's a different fabric or texture, and you could get a surprise when you open your mail. Another risk that comes with vintage shopping online is sizing. I have bought a beautiful dress online and it was going to fit me, but because of its side zip, I couldn't get it over my shoulders. On paper, it should have fit me. In reality, it just didn't. The seller wouldn't accept a return, so I'm now stuck with a dress that I just can't wear, which is really sad. So that is also another reality that you can come up to. I'm sorry when it does happen, but don't let it discourage you from trying another seller another time. My next big tip is, as you progress in your online vintage adventures, keep a list of shops and places where you have found some beautiful items and go back to these places quite often. Linking on to remembering your favorite online vintage stores, it also helps if you follow your favorite online vintage stores through social media. I have quite a lot of Instagram accounts that I follow religiously, which are selling vintage, because you just never know when a beautiful item could come up in your size. Most places are happy to tag you when the item is getting listed with a time and a rough pricing. Sometimes they don't, and they shock you when you click on the listing and you're like, do I need both my kidneys? But other times you're completely fine. So follow everyone on Instagram, follow certain hashtags. This really helps you find some really amazing, beautiful items. And be quick. Some Etsy sellers will sell the garment in a couple of minutes. So do not delay. Don't let it sit in your car and decide to wait for it. Get in, get it, get out. My last tip for everybody, yes, we finally got to the end of the list, is be patient, little one. If you are hunting for a certain dress, you may not be able to find it straight away. Some items are very hard to find depending on sizing, color, or popularity, so you may need to wait quite a while. Before I leave you, I will happily tell you some of my favorite places to shop online. One of them, of course, is going to be Etsy. Through Etsy, they have multiple online little mini vintage online shopping stores. I feel like I'm just throwing around buzzwords a lot, but they do. And you can really find some gorgeous items. There is so much vintage on Etsy. As well as that, there are some really beautiful independent stores. Most of them I have found just through scrolling through Instagram. If you look up hashtags such as vintage for sale, you can find a lot of these stores. Go to the online store and then shop through that way. I would recommend you avoiding marketplace sale sites such as Amazon, Wish, or eBay. A lot of these will be flooded by fake vintage or vintage, as you saw in my prom dress fiasco a few days ago. So keep that in mind when you are shopping. And that is it. Those are all my tips and tricks on how to shop for vintage online. I really hope they help you on your own shopping adventures. Buying true vintage is such a thrill and it's such a beautiful hobby to have. It is not a cheap hobby to have, but if anyone can find me a hobby that is cheap and not messy, please do. Please tell me all your cheap and clean hobbies in the comments below. I would love to know what they are. Thank you for joining me on our first ever tea time chat. I will be bringing back the series very soon. I'm hoping to do a little bit of information about pin-up life, pin-up pageant, and how to get started. I have been requested that topic, or those topics, so many times. It is coming. I am just building on information and making sure I present it in an interesting way. Until next time, thank you so much for joining me on my channel today. I hope you are all happy, healthy, and safe no matter where you are in the world. If you'd like to follow me on any of my social medias All the links are in the description box below, and you can always subscribe to my channel if you want to keep up with all my videos about vintage, glamour and tomfoolery. I will see you guys all in the next video. Bye!